Excellent. Okay, in the spirit of reconciliation, Hayter Institute of Education acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first inhabitants of this nation and the traditional custodians of the land on which we work, live and study. We express our gratitude for the sharing of this land, our sorrow for the personal, spiritual and cultural costs of that sharing, and hope that we may move forward together in harmony and in the spirit of healing. We pay our respects to all First Nations people and acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. So just a bit of housekeeping before we start. We have been trialling out our new banners, but we're just waiting for approval from Hayter to bring up a new welcome sign. So that will happen next week. So cameras on and your mics off, please. If you're, you turn your camera off if you have children in the room with you, or if you're going to eat, please. And turn it off to no smoking or vaping in the room. So please turn your camera off. Break times will be at 7 and 8 p.m. for 10 minutes each. Class participation, put your hand emoji up. That's down the bottom of your screen, their emoticons. Respectful relationships, be mindful and kind with your words and respect the opinion of others. We're all learners in this together. Just remember, we all have a duty of care of how we share stories and how we look after each other. Now, some of the content from tonight has what they call a trigger warning. This is about you, self-regulation, your anxieties or fears or something that might come up from some of the content. And if it starts to make you feel strange and you feel like you're reacting, please seek support from somebody who's in the home with you. If you haven't got somebody at home, reach out to a friend or family member by phone. And don't forget, you can always use 131114, that's Lifeline. They're there 24/7 and they also can talk to you about anything. So don't fear that you haven't got a big enough problem or anything like that. They're happy to talk to anybody about anything. Okay, so session 3, respectful relationships and determining mental health needs. Now, this is very interesting around respectful relationships are sometimes quite hard to do around working with people with mental health needs because of the different behaviours people display. And it's about us staying as professional as we can, but it's also about managing the awareness of different behaviours, what it looks like and what it sounds like. So we're going to talk about different types of mental illnesses here. We're going to look at gather and interpret information on those illnesses and our practices, working from a strength-based approach. So that is about putting the person first, but identifying skills that they've been using to keep themselves safe already. A lot of people don't actually realise that some of their strategies that they have been using, some have been unuseful, but there are quite a few that can be useful. We'll look at determining the needs of mental health patients and provide support to facilitate recovery. That's one of the biggest areas in this sector of work, around providing support to facilitate recovery. Recovery is a journey. Recovery is a process, and recovery can keep going on and on and on. We look at how we help empower, which I like to use the word build agency, and work towards recovery and responding to a mental health crisis. So different techniques, communication techniques are needed when you're working with someone who is living with a mental illness. How do you have respectful relationships with clients? Keep the boundaries, but also express to them that some of their behaviours are going against protocols and procedures that you have for your organisation. How do we express that to someone? And how do we create something that's safe for the worker and the participant that we're working with? So we're just going to spend 5 minutes in breakout rooms, and we're just going to ask for one group member to bring a couple of ideas back to the table to share. So I'm just going to put that question into the chat. This is around building techniques and being creative in your ways that you will work with participants. All right, so I'm just going to stop share here and press.
This meeting is being recorded.
All right, welcome back, everybody. So let's have a look. What did group 1 come up with?
Hi, I missed what the other girl said, so I don't know. So she may have already said some of these, but we came up with a few things like active listening, open body language, being mindful of the environment, that the person might not be comfortable to talk in an open space. What else did we say?
One thing like calling by name and like eye contact, body language. I think we said,
yeah,
define the task, or what that actual conversation's going to be about and stuff. So looking for like guarded conversations as well. Just a comfortable environment, and sort of stress like confidentiality. The client's rights and that as well. So
Very good. Good work, guys. Very good. Thank you for that. Room 2. Angela, Freddie, Kelly, somebody from that group, just to give us an overview.
I was the only one in the room, Helen, so I'm not
Kelly,
sure.
I'm sorry, Kelly.
That's okay. That's all right. I came back in and had a chat with the main room.
You did too. Oh boy, here we go. So Kelly, what are some of the things that you would be doing now in the industry?
Working with a lot of these kids are quite damaged, so just being there present. I found that just sitting next to them on the couch while they're playing games and things like that, but actively listening, having compassion, avoid making promises, because obviously promises can't always be met, and with kids that's a big thing. But yeah, I'm learning stuff new every day.
And that's great too, that you're learning something every day as well. Good stuff. Annie and Nathan. So Annie, did you end up in a room on your own as well, or were you with Nathan?
Is this mine or no?
Yeah, Annie, did you end up having somebody in the room?
No, nobody there, and then I come to main room with you.
Okay. Did you think of anything about that around the communication?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is it like the way you're talking with them. If you're talking with them nicely, they will be treat you nicely too. So especially the voice, like the voice, the speaking with them, and active listening. That's why I say it's the main important one.
And
It's been cut off.
sorry, Annie, I don't know if it's my end or not, but it's just breaking up a lot.
Yep, yep.
Is everybody else hearing Annie break?
Yeah.
No, she's totally fine for me.
Okay, so it's
Yeah,
my.
no,
So
yeah.
if I'm looking strange and I'm sitting here, it's my internet then that's playing up because I'm having a lot of interference happening here. So sorry. Room for Carmen, Jacinta, and Catherine.
It was just myself and Catherine, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we chatted about, other things, but I think to start off with, we did start with just trying to build some empathy to begin with, make them feel comfortable, you know, because you're not going to be able to get anywhere if they don't feel kind of safe with you, that you're not a threat, I suppose. But it would depend on how often you'd see them too. But yeah, just to try using a lot of those other strategies that people were saying to just try to build some kind of empathy to begin with.
Yeah. Nice. I like that. Thank you. Kathleen, Lorraine, Rosie.
Will I go? Nice.
That's great if you want to.
Thanks. So we discussed that very first thing of making sure that the person's in a comfortable physical environment, and discuss with them, are you happy? Are you comfortable in this room, or would you prefer to go outside? Is there somewhere else that you'd rather be?
Mm-hmm.
And also acknowledge their heightened anxiety, because they've probably come in contact with community services before, and there may be, or police, and there may be trust issues there.
Mm-hmm.
So Christine suggested that before the interview, you could offer them the option of either having a one-on-one interview with just one counsellor, or would they like to bring a support person, or just having another person from the organisation there in the room. We were talking about having things that were said being actually witnessed, because often a patient with a mental illness will think that they weren't believed, or you know, sometimes these people who are in these service facilities will just say something completely out of the ballpark, which is totally unempathetic to the person, and they feel as if they haven't been respected. And then to go and say something to somebody else, I don't want to talk to that person anymore because they haven't been respected. And they just get told, well, that can't be true because they're such a nice person, as in that case study.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's mainly what we discussed.
Good work. Good work. Some very good tips there to, you know, especially on site, you know, working with people and that preparation around understanding walking with empathy, you know, and how people would feel uncomfortable, and for us to put ourselves in their shoes for a little bit to have a bit more understanding. Great work, guys. Emily and Mel.
Yeah, Mel couldn't go on camera, I think, and then I just joined the main room.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yes, you did. So do you want to contribute what you contributed just before we come back to recording, please?
Sure. Mine was more about learning about the clients before meeting with them. So getting a little bit of a background. Helen said about currency. So finding an interest, common interest that you can go to them with. just to help build rapport and, you know, a safe space, I guess, before you proceed with the client. Yeah.
Beautiful. So talking about currency is about, when we use currency, the word current means something now happening for that person. So something that they're interested in, something that's a connector, even if it's about, you know, if the weather has been really terrible, it's a currency because everybody's experiencing it. So you're finding something to step into to talk about. But if you already know a little bit about the people that you're about to be working with, picking something, you know, they might be enjoy soccer, they might like music. You know, it's something to step into and open up a dialogue with. Thank you, Em. Right. Alafale, Amber, and Christine. So Christine, you were in 2 rooms, weren't you?
There she was. We came up with active listening like everyone else. Watch your body language, like be your posture to be open and not guarded. Also, your tone to be gentle, not aggressive. Also, eye contact. Although I did question that, because if someone's suffering from psychosis, for example, could it be a threatening thing to have prolonged eye contact with them?
Yes, and that's learning from their responses, what they're giving back to you. If they're feeling threatened, you'll know. You'll be able to gauge, you know, or they just don't want to engage with you, looking at you. Don't keep doing it to them.
Don't talk at them,
Yeah.
sort of thing. Yeah.
And sometimes,
also,
sorry.
No, you carry on. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, in that opportune moment, if that's happening, sometimes it's best to come around and sit to the side of them.
Oh, okay. That makes
and not
sense.
sit in the front, you know, that whole.
Yeah, so it's more sort of, yeah, I get that.
So that actually also takes you away from filling the space in front of them. And it's not like a barrier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another thing we came up with was, and I've used it before with my dad, was deflecting. When someone's sort of, I've used it to sort of
effective
get off a hard subject, or when someone's not coping too well.
To someone.
I'm sorry.
Can we just make sure all mics are off, please? Thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, deflecting. If you know, some example, I dealt with my dad doing it. And also having patience. You know, if the person, it may be things may seem obvious to you, but the person you're dealing with, it may not. Does that make sense?
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, and also using non-verbal cues that convey warmth and understanding. Yeah, there you go. That's what we've got essentially.
Great point about patience. We can walk with empathy, but how do we be patient sometimes? Because we've got our limits and boundaries and time frames as well. So that's a great reminder around how to walk with openness as well. Frank has also mentioned about also different cultures don't like eye contact, which is very true. And Mel has said around psychosis, for people who are in psychosis, they mightn't remember what's happening as well. So what's going on in that moment and suddenly coming to and then going back out, it's a different frame that comes up against them in their mind of what they can see and what they can sense, and then all of a sudden it's gone again. So it's like a revolving door of pictures and actions happening around, which causes great distress as well.
I can imagine it would. It would be terrible.
Yeah, but a good pick up on the patience, Amber.
Thank you.
All right. Louise and Mark.
we also had Ben in the room as well.
Thank you, yes.
Who would like to speak? I don't mind, but I'm happy if someone else did. We timed out before we made that choice. Okay, are you happy if I start? And then if you can jump in if I miss some of the things. Most of it was covered that we talked about, like the body language and the active listening. But we did talk about the setting boundaries. And when you first meet your client, really explain the boundaries of the consent and the privacy and the confidentiality. At the end of the conversation, we started to talk about using different methods of communication as well. For example, Messenger, and making sure that the boundaries are. Oops.
Oh, Jenny, can you turn your mic off, please?
Yeah, when we use different forms of communication, make sure we understand the boundaries of the organisation, and we set those boundaries with the client as well. So we're safe, and so is the client. So it's kind of more fair and open for everybody. And the other one what we did raise, which I don't think's come up in the group so far, was about sharing statistics about mental health so that the client doesn't feel isolated, and it's lots of people go through the same situations and people do recover, and just trying to make them feel that they're not alone.
Building hope, Louise.
Building hope. I like that.
Building hope, because you're saying you're not alone, but you're right in that saying that many people do this. So you're trying to normalize, in a sense, for them what's happening, which is about helping somebody feel comfortable because they're living with something that they feel uncomfortable with at times. So, but in what Louise was talking about, I would wrap that up and say that you're building hope. So well done. Like that, patience and hope. Oh, going well tonight. Patience, were you in a room on your own?
Yes, I was there by myself.
Yeah, sorry about that. Some people went into rooms and
yeah, then I came out.
Yeah. Did you think of anything around things you would say and do?
Okay, yeah. What I thought of is that first, before you work with somebody, you want to be interested, because if you're not interested of working in the industry, there's no point of being there, because you're working with people, they are mentally ill, but at the same time, they are sensitive as well. So if you're not actually fully there, they know. So at the end of the day, you have to be interested, because when you sit before them, the eyes contact, they're really interested in eyes contact, and they're also interested in your body language. But like, if you're not actually really want to be there, they understand your body language, they understand your eyes contact. So they are so sensitive in that area. So we have to be interested of being with them and communicating with them, because if you are interested in communicating with them, you will actually give them the positive mindset. That way they will feel like, yes, I'm getting something interesting, and I know I'm gaining hope from everything that the carer is giving me. So I think that's one of the things we need to be careful with. So we have to genuinely be interested of working in the field, so that when you are working with somebody, you will be able to put in all the positivity in their life, and they will feel like they are secure and they have hope for tomorrow. Yeah.
Lovely. Fantastic. Great suggestion there. And certainly the power of hope, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's it.
Helen,
Jenny.
Helen, you've got my name's up here twice for some reason. I think that's why patients had no one in the room, because
yeah,
you think the other me wasn't there.
The alter ego. Yeah, so it seemed to be a bit of a muck up tonight. We're in rooms. We've got Ben and in room 8 and room 10 as well. So Okay. Room 9, Jenny, Viola and Unalotta.
Hi, Helen.
Hi, Jenny.
I wasn't really sure what's the question because I was in the kitchen when you were doing it, and I asked the other member of the group, and he wasn't really sure as well. But I'll try to say something.
Okay.
Like the other groups saying, it's active listening and also nonverbal communications like facial expressions, body language, and gestures. It is important to be aware of those signals as they can often say more than words.
Hmm.
And also a clarity as a good communications for the, what I was trying to say. Don't say too little or too much.
Yeah.
Try
Okay.
to convey your message as a few words as possible, and
Yes.
use visuals, like help communicate your message more effectively, and be like it says there as well. It's a be patient and be honest of transparent with your communications.
I love that you mentioned about using visuals with your communication, and not using too many words. Very good skills to have here. And so then you're not overcrowding somebody with a lot of words that they mightn't hear clear enough. So good skills there, Jenny. Thank you.
That's all I can share. Thank you, Helen.
Well, that's a lot. That's good. Thank you. Your peers are learning from all of this. So what everybody ever contributes, it's all a learning curve. Rianne, I just noticed that you ended up in a room on your own as well. Not here?
I was with Brianne, but she wasn't there. So I ended up back in the main group as well. But I didn't really have anything different. It was just more about, you know, your body language when you're approaching people and being open to situations so that they feel comfortable enough around you to open up a little to you and trust you. So nothing really.
Yeah. How would you approach somebody so you didn't feel they were overwhelmed, that you weren't taking, over the space? How would you do that gently?
Like taking over it with the situation. Probably just ask them a little bit about themselves and just approach with a little bit of caution as well. You know, because I feel like if you went in with all guns blazing, it's going to put them off. And they're not going to want to tell, you know, if you get asked too many questions, it's going to sort of put them on the back foot a little bit. But if you're asking about them as well, or in the past, I found when you ask a little bit about people and their personal, what they like to do with themselves and that sort of thing, it breaks a little bit of barrier, finding out outside of a situation, finding out a bit more about them.
Very good, very good. I think one of the things is that as workers, we have to remember when we're upbeat and feeling great and bouncy, coming in that way sometimes is overwhelming. And sometimes we have to gauge, walk gently first and see what the reception you get is from the participant who's waiting there to see you, or when they walk in the room, not getting up too quickly, and go slowly until you gauge what they're feeling. And if they're really upbeat, then you can make that talk upbeat. But I learned that one a long time ago. I was so excited to start working with this family and come on in. Yeah. And they were like, whoa, what do you want? And I'm like, no, it's great to see you. And I didn't think at all about that. That was so overwhelming, here I am, I'm going to help you. And I soon learned. You've got to learn your body approach, how you step into a space, because it's their space as well. So it's a timely reminder. Thank you. Bronte and Kay.
So I was on my own. Bronte didn't come in. So I just wrote down a few things. One was being clear and precise in your communication and updating the client of the progress to show that you actually are doing something for them. So they actually know moving forward for them. And then I wrote the other stuff that everybody else has mentioned as well.
I like that you're helping them to move forward, you know, for them to see and that there is change happening where they mightn't be able to see that or envision that or recall that. That's good. Excellent, like that. Lorraine has said you may not be able to get words in as many clients don't stop talking. And that's coming in with a lot of things to say that's been sitting there brewing, and finally somebody will hear me. So sometimes it's best to help let that get out. And then when that's out, then offer a water, cup of tea, and then you can build a bit of space, and then you can go back to picking one or two things out of that. Thanks so much for sharing all that. Can I take you back? When you mentioned this, can we talk about that a bit more? So then you're going to break down the components of all that gush that's come out, because that's all been sitting there going round, 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 round. And it's got to get out. And it's about, as Mel says, it's about having somebody to listen to them, because they are ready to get some help and somebody's finally listening to them. So holding on to that often, and even as a worker, can be overwhelming that they're gushing with all this, with these words and lots of information. It's hard to pick out something out of that information and take notes on it all. So that's why I always like to focus in on one or two things out of that talk, and then go back to that and then break it down slowly. And then over time, things will come out. And Kathleen says about caution. If you approach someone, a caution, they feel as if they aren't trusted from the get-go. So being too cautious on your behalf as a worker, being standoffish, that can also send a different message. Great work, everyone. This is a lot of incidental learning here that we're having from our peers, and great information about, for some people who are working in the industry right now, their experiences and skills here coming out here. So I appreciate that sharing. Thank you. Just going to go back to my PowerPoint. So we're going to look at different types of mental illness. So we're going to start looking at some of the many illnesses, and we're going to be talking with a brief description of some of them, and then we'll do some research on these. So there's lots of mental illnesses that are very similar to each other, but to name them distinguishes them. So we can have a look at the symptoms that are happening, especially for psychiatrists, psychologists who are diagnosing these illnesses, and to understand the prevalence of it, how often it's happening, what are the characteristics of it. This is where they often use what they call the DSM-5, and that's a diagnostic manual that they use for mental health to have a look at, help diagnose mental illness. So let's start off with bipolar. So bipolar disorder is a diagnosis given to someone who experiences extreme periods of low and high moods. So it's a health condition that's characterized by periodic intense emotional states, and it also affects your energy, the ability to function at times. And these periods can last from hours to days to weeks. And they're called mood episodes when they're quite long. So mood episodes are characterized as manic or hypomanic episodes when the predominant mood is either intensely happy or intensely irritable or intensely depressed. And there's an inability to experience the opposite to what they're feeling. So if they're depressed, it's about the inexperience to be able to see joy and have pleasure in things. That goes. So people with living with bipolar disorder generally have periods of neutral moods as well. So when treated, people with bipolar can lead full and productive lives. So it's fully functioning and you're living with it. You're managing strategies. You might be on medications, not always, but you would be practicing skills and strategies to maintain your own behaviors and emotions and regulating and understanding when a change is coming. You'll see there'll be many times where you'll feel a change in your own self in moods as well. So there's different types of levels of that happens for different people, and two different types of bipolar that either way, when treated, you can have a high functioning life as well. But it's about having those ongoing supports around you for life, which is very useful around having the strategies there. Sorry, my computer, there we go. There we go. Right, so while people without bipolar can experience mood fluctuations, mood changes that are part of commonly lived experience are typically hours rather than days. And they're not usually accompanied by extreme changes in behavior or changes in functioning. And bipolar disorder can disrupt a person's relationship with others because of the difficulty that they have in managing sometimes of those behaviors. And there's three different actual types of bipolar. There's bipolar and bipolar 2, but there's also what they call cyclothymic disorder as well. And bipolar disorder can often run in families. In 80 to 90% of people with bipolar disorder, they have a relative with someone with bipolar or depression. Now, this is coming from the Psychologists Association, the American Psychologists Association, who write the DSM-5. So environmental factors such as stress, sleep disruption, drugs and alcohol may trigger episodes for people, especially those with vulnerable people who might have comorbidities around other health problems as well. But for some people, specific causes of bipolar are unclear. And there are both biological factors as well as family history or a history of mood disorders in the family. And they're also impacted by substance misuse and as well as environmental factors. So people who are living under high stress, they can also exacerbate the situation. And it's interesting, the average age of onset is the mid-20s. So often people with bipolar will frequently have other mental illness diagnosis, such as anxiety disorders, and it could be substance use disorders, and it could be attention deficit disorders as well. And there could be a high risk of suicide among people who are living with bipolar. But they still can be quite highly functional as well, but those changes happen and die quickly. So depression. A major depressive disorder is a common and serious medical illness that negatively affects how you feel, the way you think, and the way you actually act. So in most cases, it's treatable. Welcome, Emily. No worries about being late. So feelings of sadness with depression can actually block people from wanting to be participating, and that then leads to another variety of emotional and physical problems for that person, and it slows down the physical functioning for people. Often people will then become housebound. They feel it's too hard to move out. It's too hard to move through the sadness or the depressed, flat feeling. There's a loss of interest in activities, can be changes in appetite, either weight loss or weight gain, that trouble sleeping, the loss of energy then causes fatigue. So it's these things that one thing roll on to another. And the difficulty thinking and concentrating and making decisions, that actually is another part of it as well. So eating disorders. These what they class as behavioural conditions characterised by severe and persistent disturbance in the patterns of eating, and it's associated with stress and distressing thoughts and distressing emotions. So this can become quite a serious condition affecting the psychological, the social, and the physical functioning of the body. So some of the types of eating disorders are anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, binge eating disorder, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, and other specific feeding and eating disorders, pica, and rumination disorder. So obsessive compulsive disorder. So this is a disorder that people live with who have recurring unwanted thoughts, ideas, or sensations. They could be obsessed by things. And to feel that, to try and get rid of those thoughts, they'll do something repetitively. They often talk about people washing hands or checking on something or making something still lined up straight, or a book is slightly out and it's has to be just so. It's about counting and order, and this interferes with a person's daily activities and social interactions as well. And many people with obsessive compulsive disorder, which they say OCD for short, but I prefer to say the whole name. Just OCD sounds like it's shortening what that person's actually living with. There are many repetitive distressing thoughts, and these are not typically some of them don't disrupt daily life because they can manage those thoughts. But sometimes when they're persistent and intrusive and that person's rigid to them, they're not wanting them to come in, but they're taking over. That's where the distress comes in, and the consequences for those around them as well of that person can cause cracks in relationships, and those obsessional thoughts that are not realistic to others stand out because this person's doing them and makes them feel stigmatized by it. But sometimes the control for the impulse is not there, and stopping is hard at times. Now, to diagnose obsessive compulsive disorder requires the presence of obsessional thoughts and or compulsions that are time consuming, more than 1 hour a day, cause significant distress and impair work or social functioning. Mel's always written in here too that complex trauma normally triggers bipolar disorder as well. So trauma can trigger many of these things. Trauma can trigger an eating disorder. Trauma can trigger compulsive actions. So it's an evolving door that's happening. So personality disorders, that is the way of thinking, feeling, behaving that makes a person feel different from other people. And a person can be influenced by experiences, trauma, environment, surroundings, like life situations that could be happening as well. And and sometimes they're inherited characteristics that they have as well. So sometimes for somebody with a personality disorder, they might say things over, the same thing over time. And for a personality disorder, it involves an individual's way of thinking, feeling, and behaving, and it's deviating away from the society's, culture's expectations of what people can and can't do in situations. But it's very distressing because you have problems with functioning, and it lasts over a long time as well. So post-traumatic stress disorder. We might just leave that here for now. Just going to stop share. Just press. So we're going to go and do an activity which is going to help you with your assessments around researching some of the conditions that people live with. What I want to do is, I'm going to put this in the chat here. So the question is, and for those online who can do that as well, question is, research a condition, a mental illness. What are the myths and misconceptions around that? And how can you help? As a person here in the sector, how can you help? So I would like for you to all do this in groups of 3. Choose a mental illness yourself. You can choose something we've worked on tonight, or choose another mental illness condition. And I want you to find out these 3 things. What is the condition? And add an extra one in there. How is it diagnosed? And you'll find that from the DSM-5. So you can put in your search engine, capital DSM-5, and then put depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder. And up will come, look for the APA version of it. Other people who cite it have, you know, they're great authorities on it, but this is directly coming from the makers of it here, from the APA. And that can help find out how the condition is diagnosed as well, what symptoms they're looking for. That's another arm for you to research. I'm going to spend 10 minutes doing this, and I'll just make these good. No worries, Kelly, you take care. We'll see you next week. All right. So everybody's back. So I hope you've got some great information for your own self-awareness and understanding and some knowledge moving forward. Plus you'll have some good information for your resources for assessments. So let me go back to share. So determining the mental health needs of participants often takes a lot of observation, and a lot of family will often notice the differences in people as well. And this is where people start to say, look, I notice you've been having changes, you seem different, or you're doing things differently, or you're saying things differently, or your behaviors are changing. And this is where it's often good to take note of that. A lot of time people don't want to know that they're changing, but for you as a family, if you're supporting somebody who's going through seeking support, being able to help the team that is assisting and looking after your person that you care for, it's good to be able to mention some of the things that you might have observed and changing for that person over time, because a lot of it is about over time. So how do we support and empower recovery? We've actually talked a lot about that tonight around our communication, but those communication skills can also be used in all these types of different activities as well, which could be in a community centre, a support centre, but having good communication skills is one of the basis of being able to be positive role models and positive participation as well, having that for people. So move that up. So for services that actually support empowerment and recovery, it's about teamwork. It's about having an ethos of change and support. Empathy, having the values of recovery-orientated practice, and understanding a trauma-informed process and approach to working with people as well, because for many, trauma comes from many different sectors of people's lives in many different ways, and it affects how people process things and regulate emotions as well, on top of somebody who's just been diagnosed with a mental illness or disorder. That's another factor that they have to live with. Helping somebody to express what's happening for them, focus on the strengths here. Really important about the strengths. Right, remember we're being client-centered, so to help build that autonomy and agency for them, it's about building on their strengths. Like I said, there's still strategies, things people are doing that are actually keeping them here and keeping them going. And giving enough knowledge so the person can make their own choice. You're not the one that knows best for them. You might have some information. You might know where to get resources, but you are not the one to best make that decision. That person, that participant is, and they're the ones with support sometimes for some people from specialists, but it's about doing it in a collaborative way. It's about everybody sharing their knowledge. What will happen if we do something? What are the side effects of taking medication? What are the benefits of doing therapy support? All these different factors, if they're brought out and put on the table, it is then up to the participant. We know that doesn't happen all the time that way, but if it can, it's a great way to step into a recovery and wellness plan for somebody who can feel like they're actually leading the way a little bit with their choices as well. We want to promote progress. We want to help people take small steps, but it has to be monitored along the way so you can see the progress. And I think we've actually mentioned that tonight as well, about how to promote hope and how to build towards something and reach a goal. Very important to have that verbal and that visual as well. You could be doing graph work with them on goals. You talk about it, but having those different ways of showing people how they're achieving something. Even the scales of when you talk about when you come in around how you're feeling today, and they might say 1 to 5. And sometimes they're only 2 and they persistently stay in a 2, and then after a while they might start to change. So then you can talk about, that's another tool to identify change. And being aware of how we say and give our feedback. Positive reinforcement for all different types of behaviour change are crucial. As it says here, if it's negative, keep it back. Positivity helps bring about focus that I'm achieving, I'm doing something, I'm managing something. But it's about bringing positivity to keep driving that same pathway to help change. And they talk about inspiring others. It's about, for me, I think it's about the dialogue of hope, support, empathy, normalizing things for people who are living with a mental illness or disorder, and not talking negatively about the disorder itself or mental illness is another way to try and keep it within the framework of what it is. It's the same when people say they live with diabetes, they live with liver disease. These are all things we can't see, but we're ready to accept a biological change, but we're not ready to accept the biological changes of the brain as so easily. So think about that. There's a video here that'll come out with your recording. There's a clip to it, and I wanted to bring your attention to it so you can watch it. And they talk about that language of recovery, the language of change, and how it actually supports a person who's participating in therapy to change to where they're heading, how it builds hope. So do watch that, please. Sorry, I'll just get back up there. There we go. So the last thing we'll talk about tonight is around responding to a mental health crisis. There is more information in your learner guides tonight as well. Plus there are some important links in there for you to use as well. This is about a time to be very honest with someone. And if you're talking for the first time to someone, make sure the environment that you're in is quiet. You're not going to have people walking in and out. You're not going to have noises from outside, because you're trying to help somebody have focus. And when you're telling somebody about the things you've noticed for change, this is especially with a family member or a friend that you've noticed changing. And it's using the I statements here. Very important to not start out, you have been doing this. You have been forgetting sentences. You keep saying the same things over again. Blame, blame, blame. Think about, take it right back. When you use I statements, you're coming from an observation point. Because you don't know what it's like for that other person. You only watch it. So you're the observer. So come from the observer point. I noticed the other day when we got in the car that you couldn't turn that handle for the window. Was something happening for you? Or I noticed the other day when you went to pick up the cup, you were shaking a lot. You know, well, what's happening for you? Have you noticed that? Because often people don't notice what's going on for them because they live with it day in and day out. But gently, gently, gently. Can't stress that enough. And if they don't want to talk about it, encourage them to see somebody. And it's even if you're talking about it, do the talk about, let's go and talk to our GP. And they might refer us to somebody to talk about it. Because you want to maintain trust. You want to maintain respect. You don't want to take over, but you want to help them get some more information. You're there as the emotional support person, okay? You're there to help them when they're making these decisions. You will be there when they're in working for recovery, when they're working for maintenance levels, all these different areas, so they can be functioning whilst living with a mental illness or disorder. Your job is not to take over. And as a worker, as a support person, this here is what you are all about. Treating people with respect, dignity, offering emotional support and understanding. These are crucial. I'm going to highlight those. This is paramount for your work in the industry, because the outcome needs to be this. Give the person hope for recovery. When we step into talking with somebody in this situation, respect how the person interprets their symptoms as well. They mightn't see it as a problem. And if you see it as a problem and they don't, that's their choice. If that's not problematic for them, then they're saying, I'm living with this. When it gets to the point and they say, I need help, then you will be there. But don't forget that dignity of making choice, what you see and what you perceive as somebody else struggling, and you might want to help, can actually start to be looked at as taking over. You're not respecting that person's right to choice and to ask for support when they want to. Often, if that person is not managing their cognitive thinking and behaviors, other intervention will happen and other support will come into place anyway, because by then you would have had to have a diagnosis. You might have had other incidents that have happened for that person. So there's all different levels that we're working with. All the while, no matter what your role is, respect that person, help them have their dignity, offer that emotional support, and give the person hope. So, some of the things we've talked about tonight here, the most important one around that responding to mental health and understanding that recovery can be a long journey, but it's also creating a pathway for different living and managing and living with a mental illness or disorder the same as we manage to live with other medical conditions. As long as we have the right supports in place and we have those processes in place to keep us safe. Just as a reminder, sharing emails in the chat whilst recording is happening means that that email address goes out right across the board to everybody that views the recording and looks at the chat. So We can do that in a more confidential way once we've finished recording, okay? It's just an actual RTO requirement around privacy and confidentiality for everyone. Right, so let's have a look at the tasks. So for task 1, we have an online quiz. We have 13 questions, and some of the questions are around myths, which we've worked on tonight. It looks at the national standards for mental health, talks about our duty of care. A lot of these things we've done in many modules we have covered. It's in your learner guide as well. Some of them are multiple choice. So all pretty well self-explanatory. Don't forget it's an open book with your learner guide doing the quiz. So make sure you utilize that. The second task, task 2, is a research report on mental health. And this is where we want you to delve into the historical developments of health over time in Australia, which is all in your learner guide, which is what we did in session 1 as well. So you can go back to that recording and have a look. But it's set out that you will have sections you can fill in into your report in the format in task 2. You're not writing a whole, don't have to go and write a whole separate one. You fill out these sections. And let me just bring that up and show you. Okay, just take you over now and just show you. Okay. So this is what it looks like when you're in the task. So you're here to discuss the history and the approach of mental health in Australia. So this is where it talks about, you've got a word limit for the response, and you can't go over 1,200 words here. It won't take it. When you're doing your answers, there's lots of different sections here for you to do, but you've got a section to do, respond for each question in here. So it's all set out for you. Just make sure that when you're responding, no worries, Carmen, take care. When you're responding to a question, break down the question. Have a look of what it's directing you to do. What is it asking you to do? It might say research, developments, mental health, Australia. There's your research words. If you're going to do some deeper research, you will have things in your learner guide that you can go to. There are links in your learner guide to use as well. But if you want to do some extra research, please do. Make sure it's reputable websites and make sure you reference it at the bottom. Now, I don't mind if you say received from or sourced from, and then copy the URL directory. So that might be www.gov.health.au and put the date at this end. That way, you're giving recognition to where you've gone to source it. It shows us that where you've gone to a reputable website, so we know that your understanding will be, you know, you're learning from a reputable website. We don't want anything that's not something that wouldn't be recognized nationally. A lot of the places, Black Dog, Blue, Beyond Blue, Phoenix Australia, Mental Health Australia. There's lots of great websites there for you to go to. All right, so go and do researching, that's great, but reference your work when you do it. Now, it talks about the approach to mental health in Australia. So what was mental health approaches like in the 1800s here? Think about your asylums, the mental health wards where people were locked away like jails, treated like third-class citizens, and how that's changed over time. So what changed in Australia to make them work from a different stance? So we've gone from where people were locked away to a recovery process now. We have wellness recovery plans. So where did that change? Talk about that. And there's probably a timeline. So you could even do dot points, but explain. Don't just say asylums. Explain what asylums were and what happened to people in them. Then what happened in the next 10, 20 years. You can still do dot points, but it's not about one or two words. This is a research report. This is intensive work here. It's not something you're going to do overnight. You also need to answer what we call succinctly. So that is about being precise. We're not going to tell a story. We're talking about facts here. When it gets down to your opinions or your reflection or writing a conclusion, that's coming from you. That's more of a wrap-up story from you, of your understanding of what's going on. We want to have a look at the economic impact. So an economic impact of health, mental health across Australia. How much is that costing governments to have government run health organisations in hospitals and small health centres? So you can look at the Australian Bureau of Statistics and actually look at economic impacts of mental health and choose a year time frame and have a look at those facts. If you're doing percentages, so the government spent $160 million in 2022 on mental health improvements to improve the access and equity for mental health across Australia. This money was used to explain what happened. What did they do with it? What was their strategy behind that? What were they going to try and improve? And what changes happened out of that? Did things get better? So just for instance, over time, if you have a look at the age of the mental health acts across time, across every state in Australia, it's interesting that some states are still back in 1988, 1996, 2008, 2014. Then it comes to a progressive state that's done a Mental Health Act and Wellbeing. It's grown of 2022. So all these things are stages that have happened. Look at those changes over time. How was mental health seen in the 1800s compared to the 2000s? So look at these comparisons. There are many myths out there and misconceptions about mental health. This is what we want you to discuss. You can use facts, and they're very direct sentences. When you're trying to express a view, that is more descriptive. And think about your paragraphs. Paragraphs have about 4 to 5 sentences at the most in each one, and have another paragraph. Each paragraph should reflect an idea. If you're going to itemize, especially in the historical events part, I don't mind seeing dot points of historical changes over time, but please write what they are and what happened underneath that. Or do your dot points and then underneath. During the 1800s, the asylums that were had, blah, blah, blah. This was then followed on by the use of restraints, electric shock treatments, Right, explain it. Then you're putting all those facts to a framework. That's one way of setting it out. This is a research report. This is factual. And that's how you can write it. And if you use a reference, as I said, at the end of your writing, put that URL in, or if you know how to reference APA or any other Oxford, or either way, if you've learned, please use that. I'm happy for that. But if you haven't done referencing, please at least sourced from and do the URL, copy and paste the URL for me, okay? Shows me that you're researching deeply too. And there's a reference at the end of the task too, or a LibMed, I think it's called. Can't remember what the name of it's called. But there's a research tool in there. There's one called Redbook as well. You can go online and have a look. There's many online reference tools, but I'm happy at that at this level of writing for you to do what I've asked as well. So it's nice and clear for the marker to see that you've actually referenced your work. Right, now, task 3. 3 very condensed role plays. I'm just going to go and share my screen and bring that up. Oh, hang on. Sorry, I've just got to go and bring that up properly first. Okay. My bib. Thank you, Mel. I knew that was something to do with bib. Right. So in this task, you have to go to first access here, and you're downloading some forms that you're going to need for this activity. When you go to this first access website, you've got your login name and your password that you use, and that's under the staff portal that you log in. Oh, thank you, Kathleen, for the APA. Right, so there's 3 role plays in this. They're saying 15 up to 15 minutes each. I think 8 to 10 will be long enough. So for this task, you are Tori Waller, a support worker from First Access, and you are working with Jacinta here. Role play 2 is about Tony, and you're Henry Collins, a support worker. And this young man's had been injured and disabled after playing football. Then we have Ariana, and she has post-traumatic stress disorder after flooding in the home, and she fears showering, and you've come there to help them do their daily hygiene. So here's your task instructions. Here is where you need to access your support plan. You have role play instructions here as well. So somebody else, you can actually do this with a peer or someone in your family. You can use Zoom to record on, or your MP4 or WebEx. WebEx is very similar to Zoom usage, where you can record together. Very similar to setting up in the room as Zoom as well. But you can access these forms here. You click on that blue link. Oh, it's going to make me do a file save, but it'll open that up for you and you can save it, because you will need to take notes during the case note template. Now, this is the support plan for Jacinta. And here's the scenario about Jacinta. This is what we're looking for as assessors. So take your time to read these over. The same things happen for Tony. Role play instructions here. Scenario. What we're looking for. Don't forget to go and get your case notes template. And the same for Ariana. And there'll be role play instructions and a scenario. Take your time to navigate and get all your resources together first before even stepping into the assessment. Because so make it so you only have to go into first access once. Mel's saying at the bottom where you upload, you can check and make sure you have all the forms. Whereabouts is that, Mel?
So where you've got the upload part, if you can go back into it by chance. So if you keep going down there, if you go up a little bit, there, where it said submission requirements. So that's just the video.
Yep.
And then say, for instance, you go into the task, a different task bit, it'll have the same thing at the bottom, and it might say you need to have like that one. You have to have the video, the client, the support plan, and the case notes.
This Ariana doesn't have all of those. It's just a
No,
recording.
she's just got the video.
talking. Yeah. Thank you, Mel. So this is a good reminder of what you need to upload here. So you just click on there and you upload your photos. It directs you how to do it. But this is where what you need to go into First Access and make sure you collect your client's rights and privacy, consent form, a support plan, and case notes. That's what you're looking for. So with Tony, there's an email also here that you're doing for Tony. Sorry, for Jacinta. Task instructions, role play. For Tony, you have a video recording, an email, a referral request form. So here's a home visit case notes form. So this is why it's important to go through these assessments. Check to see what ingredients you need to collect and do it all in one go. Because I think you can actually put it in the search bar to bring up those forms in First Access. And there's other, I think it's actually copies of them down at the bottom area of the front page as well. It's a bit of navigating to get through, but putting the name of that in the search bar, you usually will bring them up. But just like you're cooking, you go and bring all your ingredients together before you start. That'll save you being distracted. Oh, I now need that, and I've got to go back there, okay? Just look at your first role play and dissect it. Do it gently. It'll take a while. Don't forget you can access trainers right across the week to help unpack these role plays as well. Even to do a role play with a trainer if you want to. You can record these yourselves if you're working with your peers or family as well. But even if you want some direction before you go into it, you can access Calendly and make a booking there to work with a trainer right across the week. There's some later during the week on a Monday and a Thursday. I think they go from 5 till 7. There's some later ones, and the other ones are right across the week during the week. It's always good to unpack that with a trainer before you step into it. All right. Now let me see. Yeah. So are there any questions about these tasks or this module? Yes, Christy.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I'm just answering Christy's. So can all, I'll say this for everyone, can all role plays for any assessment be done with families or friends rather than trainers or fellow colleagues? Most of them can, except where it says it must be done in front of a trainer. If it asks you to upload a video no longer than 15 minutes, aim for 10, 8 to 10. But as long as it doesn't say it must be done in front of an assessor, you can do that yourself. And this is where Zoom is great, because you can set up, download Zoom, make your sign on and make your own membership page and schedule in role plays. You record it, you save it to the cloud. Don't save it to your computer. Much easier to save it to the cloud, and it gives you a link to upload to put in your assessments, and we can go straight to that link and unpack it. Sometimes that link you might have to put on a Word document so you can upload it if there's not a space to put that, because it says upload a video. So you might need to upload something in that area. And you can use that document to put that address on. If you're going to download it onto your computer, it'll take a while. If you want to do that, of course you can, but it just will take a while. Okay. So yes, you can. So Jacinta, your mic's, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, in the Myrtle shell, there's all that stuff with, what's it called again? I think I put a question about it with, sorry, Banksia Care, and there's quizzes and all of that stuff. Do we do those activities too?
Now that's in your learner guide.
But it's also on the module too. When you click on some of the activities, it comes up,
Yes.
and there's questions and little quizzes and things. Do you do those as well?
You can do them. They're not counted towards your mark. They're called your knowledge questions. And that's your e-learning section. When you open up your file, you'll see all your modules, all the tasks lining up underneath other, and you'll see where you've got green ticks, you've done some. And then over to the right, the heading up top says e-learning, and that is about modules of any e-learning questions you've done in your learner guide, right? Whether you got them right or not. Whether you get them right or not does not count towards your marks. This is about helping you build information before you come into a task. Often it's good to read through the questions, do one or two to have it a go, just to get the feel of it, to make sure you're on the right track. Then you're guided to be able to go to your task.
Yeah.
Some of those quizzes and questions are very similar to what you'll do. So that's where it's giving you, more of that knowledge. Other people feel more confident to go read the learner guide and go straight to the questions. Another easy tool to do too is when you're working, have your learner guide open, have a split page on your computer screen and have your learner guide open, and you can do Control F and it'll bring a search bar up, and you can put the words in that you're looking for, and it'll put little lines on the side of the learner guide. If you click on those lines, it'll take you to where those words are written. So if you put wellness plan, it'll have these little lines on the side of where wellness plan's written throughout your learner guide, and it'll take you to that information. Another little tip. But have that open as you're working as well. And as I say, I'm happy for you to research and reference your work. Don't forget, right across the board, book a Calendly session with a trainer. Am I on the right track with this research report? Does this look, have I got enough information there? Think about when you have a question. I always like, if you copied and paste that question onto a Word document and then sat there and highlighted what they call directive words, what is it directing you to do? And it'll say research. It might have a word count. It might have mental health strategies. It might say develop a plan for whatever it's telling you to do. The task parts and the names of things are what you're looking for as a directive. It'll take you where, and if you looked at those words highlighted, how do they look when you do your search researches? They can be in that part of your research. Any other questions? Okay, so just remember everyone, you can book in a Calendly session right across the board. Go to your learner portal for resources and Calendly and book a trainer from there. If you can't book a trainer, ask for, you can email lso@hayderinstitute.edu.au and they can actually book in an appointment for you if you can't find a time. No worries, Louise, you have a great time. She's off to China next week. Thanks, Freddie. Thanks for being here. Good luck, Louise. All right, thanks everybody. And remember to reach out if you need support. I'm just going to sign off now.
Oh,